Here's your bracket members: Dave Gilbert, Steve Boehner, Rafael Flores, Walter Gleason, Nikita Lear, Cade Nelson, Logan Smith, Joey Wolf, Cayden Gasser. This is the Bracket U with your host, Coach Tonsoni.
Welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball bracket podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology, third episode of the season. We're in our ninth year of doing bracketology, and we wish to bring weekly updates to those of you who want to know where your favorite team stands in regards to the NCAA tournament. This podcast is for junkies who have March Madness all season long, and we're able to do this thanks to sponsorship of Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo, the generous donations of our followers, and special people like Bob Thompson, who creates our music, and Jared Morris, who supports us from the Assembly Call. I'm Brian Tonsoni, and joining me this evening is our editor, Cade Nelson, and junior member Cayden Gasser. Tonight, we welcome you into this bracket discussion. And the first thing, fellas, that we're going to talk about is new to you. I have assigned letter values on the spreadsheet, and we will add the spreadsheet here. And I will, over here in the column S, we've assigned letters. And so quickly, for our listeners and for you guys, I'm going to go over what the letter designations mean, and in an attempt to bring more accurate bracket information to everyone. We believe that the committee, and we know they vote on putting teams in the at-large field, and it takes several votes before they get their full field of 68 teams in, and then they sort them into a bracket. And we think that voting procedure does affect where people may be. It's the timing of the vote in the week that they are selecting the tournament that really matters. So for us, the A-designated teams are teams that are the top 8 teams. Each week, the top 8 teams will get A. They're locked into the top 2 seeds, and then we're going to scrub those 8 teams to make sure that we have the best teams. Then the B designations are teams that are safely in right now. There's no doubt that in some order, the teams with the B designation would be voted in by the committee. Then we go down to the C's, and the C's should be in. That's that next tier. That's the second or third day of voting for now. The West Virginias, the Missouris. Outside the top 25 type of teams, their resumes are good, and if they keep winning enough games, they're going to likely be in the tournament. The letter D is a designation for teams that have some blemishes, major blemishes on their resume, good enough to be in, but you really got to look at them to make sure that they're in the right spot. And then the stars represent those teams that are truly on the bubble. What we're trying to do here, Cade and Cayden and Joey in the background, our student producer in the background, we're trying to each week put together a process where we're closer to the voting that goes on in the NCAA committee room without our group actually voting every week, because it's so time consuming that we're going to sort these teams, and then we're going to evaluate these teams within their letters, which are the best A's, which are the best B's. And yes, I do believe teams can move up and down these letter designations. But that way, we're going to make sure we don't have any big jumps from a 10 seed to a 7 seed, those types of things that I think we overanalyzed the bracket information last year when we compare a team at 32 to a team at 44. Those aren't probably getting compared in the tournament. We know they're not, that they're voted in chunks, and then they're compared one team to the next, and I think that affects maybe some of the seeding. So, Cade, you've been the veteran. Your thoughts? We've talked a lot about the voting process. Your thoughts about the A, B, C, D designation that we're going to try to do a little bit more of?
Yeah, I like the idea, but the only thing that I would say is that the B kind of spot is a pretty big spot. You got a lot of teams in that section. So when we're saying we want chunks of teams, that big B group will be tough to try to, kind of seed and match up, because if we were saying that there's that large of a gap between all the teams, we might have a lot of movement, and then it might create a situation where, we might be trying to move a team too much within that B area. But other than that, I think it's a great way to sort teams and just be able keep an extra eye on teams that we know are in certain spots that have happened in the past.
Yeah, the way we'll do it is we'll start at the bottom of each letter, and we'll compare the bottom B team to the next top B team, and if they move up, then we'll just keep moving up. At some point, let's say that bottom team moves up 2 or 3 slots, and then they don't move up, we just jump ahead. So it's kind of a new. That's how I think we will handle if we have too many in one group. Cayden, your thought process for adding this in to our process.
I like it a lot, but I think it puts way too much value on the higher seeds. I mean, we want the value on the high seeds to be amazing, but 2 and 3 are still a battle right now. Like, you could put any team for UCLA right now. You could put any team for Baylor right now. I think the A and B category, it kind of puts a line there and says that they can't go up that point. It kind of makes it feel like.
Yeah, we got to make sure we don't do that. That's why I said you can move from A to B, and it's not a permanent designation. So, we have Tennessee that's now in the B range. They were a 2 seed for a long time. They have a 3 net. If we discuss tonight or on Monday that they need to be in the top 2, it's just that the top 2 are generally your best teams. And I think right now 6 of those teams are going to stay in there. 2 might move up and down in those A and B. So, Jack, we got a question from Jack in our comment section, and we'll just address it here right away. When we try to do bracketing, which is a very complicated situation because of all of the bracketing rules, to get to the closest site, I believe it's flight miles, Jack, and if you Google flight miles, there's several different calculators that you can do, and I don't know the exact formula from which airport to whatever, but I take a city. If Kansas is to Columbus or something like that, I will take the city that they fly out of or their city to Columbus, and the closest in flight miles is where we kind of assign those teams in 1 through 4 in the 1 through 4 protected region. And there are some. The number 1 seed gets to pick, I believe, where they go, and then after that it's assigned. But I do think it's assigned by flight miles, not driving miles. I can double check with you, Jack, and get back with that. But that's what we do. We have a bookmarked a website, and we just go to it and type in the 2 designations, and then take which one is closer. So that's the fun part of bracketing. All right, fellas, let's get to our top seeds. Right now, we have maybe one surprise. Purdue, Alabama, Houston, and Kansas. There's a lot of talk, and a lot of people have Arizona. Cayden, your thoughts about Kansas, Arizona? It's a good debate. Take it away.
I think Kansas actually looks pretty good because they don't have – they have the 5 quad 1 losses, but that's all they have. They have the best schedule in the entire bracket. They have the best schedule possible, and they aren't really losing anywhere. They're 4 and 3 on the road. That's about their worst position. But you also got to look at Arizona. They're doing amazing too. 2 losses on the road. They have only 3 losses total, and Kansas has 5. 6-2 in quad 1. They have the quad 3 loss, though. That kind of hurts them.
Yeah. Cade, what's the difference for you between Kansas and Arizona? I think we're going to keep maybe going back and forth on this one until the end of the season. But what's the deciding factor for you?
For me, the deciding factor is that Kansas has 10 quad 1 wins. And I think when you're able to have the best strength of schedule in the country, win games on the road, don't lose in any other quads besides quad 1, and have the most quad 1 wins, I think there's no reason you should be off the 1 seed line. I understand that they have a double-digit net, and I think for me that's the only reason that Kansas would be off the 1 seed line. But for Arizona, if they were to move up, I think they would have to have like 3 or 4, probably not 4, but maybe 3 of like the 1A top tier quad one wins that we kind of see, and those wins being like over a 9 net Texas, a 5 net UCLA, a 2 net Alabama, like really top tier wins, especially to make up for that quad 3 loss. I know the quad 3 loss isn't a lot, but when you're trying to compete with someone that has 10 quad 1 wins, I feel like you got to have a lot of good on your resume to be able to jump them.
I think it's extremely tight. I know when you look at Arizona's wins, I think they have the 1A, the top tier of Quadrant 1. They have more wins than Kansas there, so they have more quality wins. But it's number 3, Tennessee net, number 5 net UCLA, number 15 net Creighton. Tennessee's struggling right now, and they dropped from number 2 to number 3 net. They're dropping in seed line for us. And boy, that Big 12 is just tough. I think if you look at the 5 losses, and that's a determining factor for Kansas versus the 3 losses of Arizona. Kansas is playing in a conference where every night you're playing against a top team. So for us, it comes down to total number of quad 1 wins. Combined quad 1 and 2 at 14 is the best in the country. Their strength of schedule, non-conference and overall, is very, very solid. They've won on the road. They have no losses outside of quad 1. To me, it is clear, but Arizona's right on their tails. So moving on to our 2 seeds for the night, we do have that Arizona team. Texas was under consideration for a 1 seed, lost to Kansas earlier this week. We have Baylor moving up at 18-6 with 7 quad 1 wins and no losses outside of quad 2. And we have a UCLA team that at one point we had a 3 seed, but thanks to Tennessee losing, we feel that maybe UCLA is back on the 2 seed line. Cade, anything on the 2 seed line that really grabs your attention?
I wouldn't say there's anything that's really crazy. They all seem like teams that have good wins, but their net just isn't as good as the 1 seed line. So that's the only reason they can't move up. But to me, the cool thing to see on this 2 seed line is that Texas has the weakest non-conference strength of schedule, but they've been able to build off of their conference being so strong this year and pick up quad 1 wins, all while not scheduling the toughest outside of their own conference.
Cayden, your thoughts on the bottom half? I think Arizona and Texas are real solid 2 seeds. They lose games, they're going to be quad 1 losses. I don't think that's going to affect their resume. But the 2 teams that we got to kind of watch for moving out of the 2 range and dropping from that A designation to a B designation would be Baylor and UCLA. Your thoughts on those bottom 2 teams?
Looking at Baylor, I kind of liked it because they got the 6 strength of schedule and the 4-3 non-conference strength of schedule. And that they have no losses under quad 1. And if you look at the far right in the R category, which is the average net of the games they lost, it's a 13, which is it's a 15. I was looking at Texas. It's a 15, which is the second highest number, tied for, third highest number for that category, and that's really good, I think. It helps them out.
Yeah, and UCLA's best win, the quality, when you talk about quality wins, their metrics are good, but their best wins against Maryland, and Maryland's either a 7 or 8, depending on where you put them. So I think teams like Iowa State, Kansas State are really pushing on that 3 seed line. So let's go to our 3 seed line right now. And if you can see on the screen, we have this is our spreadsheet with the data that we import every week. Iowa State, Kansas State, Xavier, and Tennessee. Tennessee's the team that's falling for us. They've lost a couple games, even a heartbreaker to Vanderbilt. They won a game 46-43. I think their metrics overall keep them solidly into consideration for these top couple seed lines, but they're definitely a team that has 5-2 in quad 1 and 3-3, 3 losses, the most of any team in the top 3 seed lines in that quad 2 range. I think they're the struggling. Cayden, do we have the right teams on this 3 seed line?
Looking at it right now, I kind of see a different point of view where Iowa State is just playing really well. They haven't been playing well on the road, but at home they're shut out. They ain't letting anyone beat them. They're 7-7, which is the best on that 3 seed line, and it's beating two of the 2 seed lines. I mean, Arizona's still a lock, but UCLA is very movable right now. They don't.
So we did have Iowa State over UCLA earlier this week, and then Iowa State loses and goes to 500. UCLA's one game under 500 in the quad one. So you combine it 10-4 versus 9-7 in the 2 quads. That would be the move. I agree with you that if we were to change the 3 seed line, we'd probably move Iowa State up and UCLA down. That would be a point of discussion for us. Cade, your thoughts here on the 3 seed line?
Yeah, I think our 3 seed line is pretty solid. I would compare Tennessee to maybe last year's Houston. And the reason I say that is because their wins aren't necessarily like they don't have a great amount of them, but their metrics are good. And I wouldn't move them down at all. Like we did Houston last year, I wouldn't move Tennessee down like that because Houston didn't have any quad 1 wins last year, but at least Tennessee has 5 of them. So they still have good wins, even though they don't have a great amount of them. I think they're still deserving to be on that 3 seed line because they've been able to pick up some nice wins.
Our student producer behind the scenes who's keeping track of stuff, and we're looking to give him some extra work putting banners up and everything. We got to figure that out. Joey Wolf is there, and he says Iowa State should be a 2 seed, and so we're looking at that being one of our decisions that we might have to make. Okay, so now we go to the 4 seed line, and there could be some discussion here because this is where I think you see a lot of movement in and out at this level. Virginia, which could be a 3 seed, I think, at 18-4 with 4 quad 1 wins and no losses outside of quad 1. St. Mary's beat Gonzaga last weekend since our last show. UConn, who struggled, great start, struggled bad in the middle, and now has won some good games, including beating Marquette recently. Kind of righted the ship. They're 500 in quad 1 at 5 wins. And then you have Gonzaga at the 4 line, and Marquette dropped out of our 4 seed line, and I think Marquette is deserving of some consideration. So, Cade, back to you. There's about 5 teams. I don't think Miami, Indiana, or Rutgers are worthy of a 4 seed right yet, so I think there's 5 teams for 4 spots. Your thoughts about our 4 seed line?
Yeah, I think our 4 seed line, I'm not sure that really any of them can move up, maybe UConn, but I was just looking at St. Mary's, and I might have to contradict myself. Our TV show we did last Tuesday, we said that we were serious about St. Mary's being a 4 seed. I'm not sure if I can stand with that now because they have 2 quad 3 losses, a non-conference strength of schedule in the hundreds, and only 2 quad 1 wins. And I think that, I'll compare this team to Houston again, Houston from last year. Their net is worse than Houston's. Their quad 3 losses are worse than Houston's. Houston didn't have any wins in quad 1, but they didn't have any losses outside of quad 1, I believe.
Yeah. Cade brings up a lot of times, and we all agree with him. You got to win games. Like, it's about winning games. And the number on the left of our sheet there is the net ranking, which I like, and a lot of people do not like. But there are outliers in it. If you have great games of 30, 40-point wins, your offensive efficiency is great, and your defensive efficiency is great, and that kind of skews the number a little bit. So it's important, and it's better than just the RPI, in my opinion. But it's not the only thing. I think you need to win games. So when he's talking about St. Mary's and Tennessee and UCLA, they haven't won games. And then people would probably argue back with us, because I agree with Cade, that they don't have the opportunities. But do you punish a Kansas for being in a good conference and winning 10 quad one games versus UCLA, Tennessee playing in conferences that you don't have those wins? I think it shows the strength of Kansas. It doesn't necessarily take away the strength of some of those teams, but St. Mary's is always going to be tough. Gonzaga is always going to be tough. The Houstons of the world, they are very good quality teams, but the math doesn't necessarily add up win-wise. So that's maybe the metrics and the net is good, that it kind of does some equalizing of things. Cayden, your thought on our 4th seed line. We moved St. Mary's up because of their win over Gonzaga. I think Virginia's a lock. The other 3 could be up for discussion. Your thoughts?
I agree with you about Virginia. I even might see Virginia moving up if Tennessee keeps losing, playing bad, or anything, if their seed or if their net drops. Because I just looked at Virginia, and they're on a 6-game home win streak. Their loss was this Virginia Tech, which is a quad one, obviously, because they have 4-4 in quad one. But they're just playing really well. Most of their games are 10-point games, winning by 10, and it just looks amazing for them to have that kind of spread on their – it's not – have that kind of spread for their quad 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it's not helping them move up as much as they wish they would, but it's spreading them out so they have games in every single section.
So Cade smoothly transitions us to our next topic. We're going to look at the middle, because a lot of times we come on these shows, we talk about the top 4 seeds in the bubble, and we leave the middle teams out. And unless you're in our live chat and asking us questions, we may miss a team. But we're going to go to 7 to 10. So these are a lot of our teams on this line are in that C category, where we believe they're good enough to be in, but they can't go on a losing streak. They need to still win some games, because they can float from anywhere from a 7 seed down to a 10 seed or 11 seed, which is dangerously close to falling out. And he brings up West Virginia. West Virginia has a 19 net. It's in the middle of our screen here. We'll move it up for you. Great strength of schedule numbers. They have 2 road wins, 2 neutral wins, so they've won away from home. They have no losses in our designation here. Blue is quad 2, yellow quad 3, and red is quad 4. 5 quad 1 wins, 5 and 9. To a lot of us, sometimes looks bad. Like 5 and 9 is bad. But you're playing games in a tough conference, and you've shown that you've been able to win. Now, most of those have come at home. So West Virginia, to be solid, should have to move up. But they're an 8 seed for us. And so when you get in the back end of 7, Michigan State is a 7 for us, which I'm not sure I like, because they are 15 and 9 overall, but they've had some injuries. So what do you guys do? We'll go to you, Cade, because Cayden's kind of talked about West Virginia. Maybe pick out a team that – there are some teams in this area that have some losses, but they have 4 or 5 quad 1 wins, which really puts them in the tourney, but they're not real solid teams. Cade, your thoughts. Pick a team. Maybe talk about West Virginia or Michigan State or someone that is a little bit – these teams are difficult because where do you put them, right? And this is where we had the most problem last year. Like we nailed seeds 1 through 6 and even some 7 seeds, and then you got 7 to 10. And this is an area that we have to get better at, because we had teams in the 7 line that were on the 10 line, and teams that on our 10 line were 8 seeds. So we've got to kind of understand this grouping better. Cade, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why this area is so, tough to seed is because you'll get a team like Providence where, they're 5 and 4 on the road. They're 3 and 5 in quad 1 with, a couple quality wins, but their net is 39, and they have a non-conference strength of schedule of 268, which is not what you want to see at all. And so you have to be able to balance, the tiebreakers and the net in quad 1 wins. I feel like we look at quad 1 wins and net the most. And so to be able to balance the power of the net with wins is tough, because when you get a team like West Virginia, they have one good win with a couple more decent ones, and their net is 19. If you're not looking at wins, they move up because of their net. But if you're looking at wins, then they might move down because there are teams that have better wins. So, it's just a matter of being able to balance and tie break between teams that are so close. And that is what makes it hard.
So I'm going to take this portion of the show and talk Pittsburgh and Northwestern. They're sitting on our 10 seed line. We had them as 9 seeds earlier this week, and it's just people may ask, if you had them as 9 and they didn't lose, why did you drop them as 10? Because we reset twice a week, and maybe 3 times a week from scratch. We clear this spreadsheet out. We import new data, and we sort 1 through 68 fresh. And the reason we do that is to try to eliminate bias of, okay, we had a team here, and then, or a win, you got to move up, a loss, you got to move down. And we just look at teams. And this is why we went to the A, B, C, D designation as well, trying to see if we were on the committee, when would you vote these teams in? And I think you're going to vote Pittsburgh Northwestern in around this 9 or 10 seed line. And so they're interesting. If you look on our screen here, what to do with teams with 50 nets. And the net is not the reason you rank them here, but what makes seeding difficult trying to guess the bracket is you look at 5 wins in quad 1 and 3 in quad 2. That's 8 overall. That's a good record, but then their metrics aren't very good, and there's just no clear-cut rules coming out, transparency from the committee on how they balance it. Is it 75 wins, 25 metrics, or whatever? And that's why we're trying to go to this ABCD thing, because I think these teams are going to come in, Pittsburgh, Northwestern, are just weak enough offensively and defensively that the committee is going to vote them in ahead of the teams that will be out. But they're going to follow some of these teams that have less wins but play a little bit better. Your Arkansas, Auburns, which are also difficult for us. If I were doing this for the Brian Tonsoni NCAA committee, Pittsburgh and Northwestern would be ahead of Arkansas and Auburn because they win more. I mean, 8 and 6 is better than 7 and 7. But that's just me being used to standing boards. How do you factor in road wins? Pittsburgh does have 6 wins against the field. So if you see Pittsburgh in an 8 seed or a 9 seed, because they've beaten some tournament teams, and I think that matters as well, and that's more important to me than the 51 next to their name. Northwestern has beaten Michigan State and Indiana on the road. That's 2 teams seated higher than them. So I would really prefer to have Pittsburgh and Northwestern on the 9 seed line. But historical trends are a part of this too, and the 50s come in at that 9-10 seed line. So I think we got to discuss, is Pittsburgh and Northwestern a C team? Do we move them up over Arkansas and Auburn? Well, we'll have to see how that plays out. So now we're going to transition towards the back end of our show, and we're going to now go to the bubble, which are the teams that are last in, and those teams designated right now by stars, but also some of these D-rated teams. If you're on a 10-seed line or 11-seed line, you're on the bubble. So, Cayden Gasser, we have 2 real good teams, plus your team, in the first 4. Kentucky, North Carolina, Memphis, and Wisconsin. Talk to me about your Wisconsin Badgers. They have 6 quad 1 wins, 2 quad 2 wins, no losses in quad 3 and 4. They're 4-4 on the road, great strength of schedule records. I think we have them way too low. What do you say?
I mean, I'm a little biased towards them, but I'm always going to say they're way too low. But this is really shocking to have them this low. We were talking about earlier, when we were talking about in our meeting on Tuesday, I was a little shocked that we had them this low at the end of it. But they're looking better now. They've just beat Penn State. And they're really just playing ball now. Their strength schedule is 9. They have probably the worst record here, and I think that's what's keeping them down mostly. But they also haven't played as many games as the other teams have.
Wisconsin's net's going to be an issue at 72. Rutgers got in with 6 quad 1 wins, and they were like the 3rd to the last team in. So Wisconsin's done enough, and they had some injuries. I still think, Cayden, I think they're 11 seed. I think Wisconsin's in. The question is, are they in the last four, or are they up there where New Mexico or Boise State? I would probably think we should move them up ahead of Boise State. That's where I would say, we might do that for Friday's bracket. I just think 6 wins in quad one is hard to look away. And then when you put Rutgers in last year and you add the injuries, Wisconsin probably should be an 11 seed, if not a 10 seed. Cade, Kentucky, North Carolina. What the heck? That's a heck of a Tuesday or a Wednesday night game to start the tournament. What's going on with these two blue bloods?
Yeah, that's a good question for maybe their coach. I don't really know why they're losing so much, but that is the case this year. And I think when you compare these two teams for this seed line, they're really close. And it comes down to, for me, one win between the two. Kentucky has a really nice win against Tennessee. And, that's, to me, that, I feel like I've said on the bubble, the only thing you may need is that one really, really solid win to move you up. And that's exactly what Kentucky has. So I don't think that with, a 500 record on the road and a decent net in 40, I don't think you can move them down with that really top tier win that they have.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. To our listeners and viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the audio, you can't see this, but these teams don't have a lot of wins in quad one, but they have a lot of quad two wins, and they have good schedules. So I think the committee, when it gets late, kind of looks at, do you play? Notre Dame had the 25th best schedule, only had 2 quad one wins, and they got in last year. So, teams that are out, I've moved up here. These are our teams out. Clemson, 339 non-conference. Texas A&M, 252. Mississippi State, 231. They have a few more wins maybe, but I think when it comes down to these last teams in, they are going to be, if it's a tie, you need to those non-conference strength of schedules are going to hurt. So Seton Hall, Oregon, and Florida are in a good position. If they can put 3 or 4 wins together, they might be able to move into the bracket. I think definitely the teams with weaker schedules definitely need to get up to the 5 or 6 wins in quad one if they can to be considered. But Cayden Gasser, if there's a team here on our screen that is the next team to move in, who you picking?
I'm looking at Seton Hall because their strength of schedule is probably the best out of the younger group we have, the lower group we have. Their loss rating is like a 39, which I said earlier was the average net of the teams that beat them. They're tied for the most wins in quad one, and they just look amazing. To me, I guess they look better than they were earlier. They haven't been able to put. They're 5-4 on the road, which is, I guess, good, but
it's better than the other teams. It's better than, and Seton Hall just took a loss to Creighton, and I agree. I like that. For me, it's Texas A&M at 17-7. Texas A&M's got to overcome 2 quad 4 losses, so I would say they need to even out their quad 1. They're 2-4, and they're 4-3 on the road. They don't have great strength of schedule numbers, so yeah, they're going to have to add some win columns for me. But I think Texas A&M, Cade, the team that's out that you think might be the next to go in.
Yeah, I think the team that's out that should move in, I'm going to have to agree with Cayden and outvote you 2-1. I have Seton Hall. All right. I think the way you were talking about, the scheduling of the teams on the bubble and the way you're able to, pick up those solid quad 1 wins, Seton Hall has they have a good schedule, wins on the road, and they have a really nice win over the 7-net UConn. So, like I said just a second ago, when you're able to get that one really solid win that can kind of, step ahead of everyone else around you, I think that is a really good factor that can set Seton Hall apart. And the fact that they only have one, bad loss. I don't really consider it a bad loss, seeing that it was at the beginning of the year. And, I feel like all teams got to find their groove somehow. So they had to take one quad 3 loss, and then being able to have that win with their good strength of schedule, I think that beats out a Mississippi State's, having no wins or no losses outside of quad 2, and it beats Texas A&M's net when they have a non-conference strength of schedule of 200.
So if you're watching us live or you're watching on YouTube on our replay, you just saw how we sort these teams. The column T over on the right, we put the number, and then I got outvoted 2-1, and so I went and moved Seton Hall above Texas A&M and dropped Clemson. That's how this committee works. The more eyes we see, the better results we get. And, these guys show, obviously, with what they talk about here, that they really know what they're talking about. And so Seton Hall is now the first team there, despite their loss to Creighton, which is, Creighton's a top-level team. Okay, to end the show, we always end the show here by our game winner. And our game winner category this week is team to watch this week. A team either on the rise or fallen, but a team that you guys are going to watch. Cayden Gasser, what team are you watching?
It's probably going to be the same as normal, but I really want to watch Wisconsin this week because we just have them that low right now. Nebraska and Michigan are up this week through the end of next week, and I think they have a good chance to win it. But if they play like they have played before, it could be a whole different story.
And Cade.
My team to watch this week, I'm going to follow Cayden's footsteps in watching my favorite team play as well. And it's kind of a depressing way to watch Ohio State, being that they're 1-9 in their last 10 games. They're the second to last team in the Big Ten right now. They're 1-7 on the road with a quad 4 loss. So they went from just needing a couple wins to get themselves back in contention, because the only thing they have right now is quad 1 losses. So, they haven't really taken a lot of bad losses. They have a quad 4 loss, but nothing crazy. So they went from just needing like 2 Big Ten wins that would have been maybe a quad 1 or quad 2 win, to needing a miracle, pretty much. So I think that they have to win the Big Ten tournament or make it to the championship at least, and win out for the rest of the season. So I'll be watching Ohio State to make a late push in the end of the season.
That's wishful thinking. Sorry. You guys outvoted me. You can watch your Wisconsin and Ohio State. I'm watching Arkansas and Auburn, 2 teams in the SEC, both 17-7, both sitting in our 8-9 area. I don't think they have good resumes. I don't think either one does. And they're going to need to win some games. So I'm going to be trying to keep an eye on who they play here over this weekend to see if they can improve on their resume. Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Bracket U. We'll be back next week. Until then, check out our website, DelphiBracketology.com. Follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @DelphiBrackets for any updates and information. Check out our donation page where you can help with all costs associated. I want to give a shout-out to Cayden Gasser for the intro, creating the intro for Joey Wolf behind the scenes, who updates our spreadsheet for us almost daily with some new data and information, and obviously for our editor, senior leader, Cade Nelson. For the both of them, we wish you a good night and that your team continues to win the big ones. We'll see you later.